We're getting to that point in the transfer window where targets are becoming more concrete, links are becoming more reliable, more concrete. Eze and Gallagher recently linked to Spurs. And in today's video, we're going to break down the transfer targets for each position at Tottenham. We'll start with the striker, then the wing, then the midfielders, then the defence, sort of putting them in boxes in terms of how reliable the sources are that are reporting them, who the targets are for each position, what looks most likely. And then we're going to rank the targets in a tier list of which is going to be a good signing, which would be a bad signing in multiple tiers. But I'm a Man United fan, and I thought it was only right that I have a Tottenham fan join me for today's show, especially helping with the rankings as well as getting in with the news. So, Henry, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I can see there's you've already done a lot of research on, probably more research than I have, to be fair, on a lot of these players. But yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, big up Henry for coming on. There will be a link in the description to Henry's channel, so go check it out. He's got 2 channels, one Spurs, one general football. I'll put a link to both down below. But I want to quickly get through a couple of these stories, and then I want to dive right into the tier list where we're going to be talking about these signings and who, would be good. Less reliable links, I've put Sesko, Evan Ferguson and Hwang in there. I don't know if Tottenham are going to go for them. I think some of them would be great signings, but not been super reliable. They've more recently been linked to sort of Rodrigo Muniz, Omar Mamouche, Ivan Toney as well, a lot of times, but that came from semi-credible sources. And then very reliable sources have linked them to the likes of Toney again, Girassi, Gyökeres, Jimenez, and even Solanke's been mentioned a couple of times around Tottenham. Now, Henry, I'm going to quickly ask you, what do you think Spurs will do in the transfer window striker-wise? Out of all those links, what do you think is most likely?
I think the most likely out of all the names that's on that list, one striker that has been coming up for around 18 months now, is Santiago Jimenez at Feyenoord. Now, I'm very skeptical when it comes to link players from that league because, Man United, you've seen Antony, 100 million euros. Gravenberch at Liverpool hasn't had a fantastic season. Even before that, Steven Bergwijn when he joined us. And our loanee, Troy Parrott, has gone over to the Eredivisie, who couldn't even get a game in the Championship and got 18 goal contributions in that league. So it's not in terms of technical. It's obviously got fantastic players, but the standard of team is a lot lower than what you see in England. So I think he got something like 30 goal contributions in 32 games, which is on paper absolutely ridiculous numbers. But he wouldn't be my number one choice, but I think he's the most likely. When we played the last home game of the season, he and 2 other players from Feyenoord were given a box, which later come out a week later from an Instagram story that he put out that was taken down, that Feyenoord asked him to take down. So I think he's the most likely in terms of the way Ange plays. He probably fits the system in terms of his profile the most. I personally would choose someone like Ivan Toney. I know he gets a lot of rap because of what he did with his gambling situation, and he didn't really have a great season when he came in January with Brentford. But if you look at the year before, he got 20 league goals in a Brentford side that, other than him and Buemo and Wissa, they didn't really have too much attacking threat. So, but Brentford apparently wants 60 or 70 million pounds, and we're not going to pay that with 1 year left on his contract. You've got no chance.
Yeah. You're spot on, because I remember Depay coming from the Eredivisie to Man United, and it was just like, I was like, oh, this guy's a baller. He comes to United, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. Which brings us into the tier list. We've got the must sign if possible category, the top signing, a decent signing for the right fee. Like, it's not someone that you'd sign, but if, it's like a bargain deal, you're like, you know what? Not my first choice, but for that kind of money, I'd do it. Could do better, and then just why are we linked to him? And I want to start with Santiago Jimenez, and where would you put him as a Tottenham fan?
I'd probably put decent for the right fee. I don't think spending 55, 60 million euros on him is going to be justified. But if it was like 30 million euros, 25 million pounds, I'd bring him in. But I do think if he comes in, you've got to bring another striker as well, because we can't be reliant on Jimenez and Richarlison in 4 competitions, knowing with Richarlison's injury record.
No, I agree with you on that. It could be a top signing, but because he's Eredivisie, you have to just sort of put that sort of cap on the fee. Now, another one that has been unbelievable this season, but again, in a lesser league, is Gyökeres. Would you rate him any higher?
This is another one. Darwin Núñez come out of that league. Vinicius, the striker we had, I don't even think he could get a game at Fulham. I'd put him in the same category, decent for the right fee. Yes, he got 50 goal contributions, but you're playing in a league dominated by 2 teams or 3 teams. I know you've got Braga in there as well, but yeah, I'd put decent for the right fee. Like for a top signing's got to be more around the fee, the impact, the system, and then must sign if possible is like a worldie.
Yeah, Portuguese league is a risk. It seems to pay off for Man United with like Ronaldo, Nani, Bruno Fernandes. Like Sporting do a lot of good work for us, but I think he seems a bit of a late bloomer, and it's like he's either a late bloomer and it could be like a top signing in my opinion. It could be, but when you're hearing like 80, 90 million pounds, it just then goes into decent for the right fee. Which another one that I think could be a bit overpriced because it's Brighton, but Evan Ferguson. What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean they're looking at £100 million, which for what is he, 18, 19 years of age? Like he had a great game against Newcastle last year where he got that hat trick, and overall, his overall play, like people are comparing him to Harry Kane. He's strong on the ball. His hold up play is good. His distribution's good. But I think in terms of his quality, I'm in between decent for the right fee and could do better because he's not a prolific 20 goal a season player. And I know people are going to say, yeah, but he's young. I probably would put him down as the could do better section. Like I know Ange has come out and said he wants a title race. Like I'd be happy if he was in the squad with maybe 2 or 3 other forwards that can get 20 goals a season.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in decent for the right fee. But then when I look at Spurs and like replacing Harry Kane and that experience and the fact that he didn't have the best second half of the season, I think when you look more at what Spurs need, you probably need someone that might be a bit more ready-made, I'd say. Going into Ivan Toney, where do you put him?
Me personally, for the way we play, I would put him in top signing. But the caveat to it is, that, like, as we just mentioned, the 60 to 70 million pound price tag is absolutely ridiculous with 1 year left on his contract. I know you lot paid, what was it, Chelsea 50 odd million for Mount with the add-ons. I think it was 60 million. He had a year left on his contract, but Chelsea are notorious for selling talent at top prices. Brentford, I don't even know what their biggest record fee from selling a player is. And based off last season, I think he only got 6 goal contributions and he doesn't want to be there. Can you really command 60 million? I mean, it's madness.
It's crazy. I think like if you can get that guy for 40 million or less, that is like a top signing. But because he ended the season badly and like there's a bit of a price tag on him, and I think he's like 29, so it's not even like he's like 25 or something. I think, it would be top signing for me. Another one that's been linked, who has had a good season and a better season than Toney, but I personally don't think he's good. Is as good. I think he's still a decent player. It's Solanke. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, he's another one. It's very, very strong season. I think he got something like 44% of the goal contributions for Bournemouth last year or something crazy like that. I'd put him in decent for the right fee. If it was like 25 million, 30 million, the fact that he's homegrown, I guess you could say he's Premier League proven, although he's only had 1 season where he has scored a lot of goals.
Yeah.
But once again, Bournemouth are looking at 50, 60 million. I don't think you can justify that for Dominic Solanke personally.
Yeah, no, I agree. What about the guy that might go to Arsenal, might go to Chelsea, Benjamin Sesko?
For me, I'd put him in the top signing category. I know he's not or must sign if possible. Put him at the top. I think if Arsenal get him, that is a massive kick in the. I'm not going to get us demonetized, but it is a massive kick. He's got 20 years of age, 14 goals last season in the Bundesliga. I know he's not the main number 9 because they've got Luis Openda, but yeah, I think he'll be a top player.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's got that Haaland sort of potential in him. And if I was Tottenham, I would go all out for Benjamin Sesko, not just to annoy Arsenal, but I think he could be that guy. The next name is one that has more recently been linked, but he's been linked to a lot of Premier League clubs, and that is Rodrigo Muniz of Fulham.
Oh, yeah, straight in that why category. Why are we being linked to him? He got like 8 or 9 goals in a Fulham shirt. Everyone's losing their minds about him. I don't really think he's that great, to be honest. When he played against us, I mean, at the time, we were leaking goals like a sieve. So, yeah, I would just I don't want to be linked to him. No offense to Fulham, but for me, not good enough.
Yeah, I think when you're replacing Harry Kane, you've also got to remember that. What about the Frankfurt player that's had a very good season, Omar Mamouche? Probably said his name wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I did a video about him yesterday. I'd put him in the could do better category. He's had a very good season in terms of individually, but the way we play, I don't necessarily know if he can be the number 9 in terms of hold the ball up. be good on the ball. Like he's a good technical player, but I think we can just do better, to be honest.
Yeah. The one thing he would bring is versatility, able to play out wide. But I think, again, as you're replacing Harry Kane, I think you just want that sort of ready-made striker. Very similar to Omar, we've got Girassi, who's sort of a bit of a late bloomer, had a very good season, could be available for maybe the £20 million mark as well.
Yeah, I think he's got a 17 million euro release clause. At Stuttgart, he's been ridiculous, but it's again, it's another Solanke sort of kind of only had one season. I guess so. At 17 million euros, what's that, like 14, 15 million pounds? Is there really too many like downsides to I'd put him in decent for the right fee.
Yeah, like when you're looking at the price tag around the deal and how much it could cost, it's good. But I think it's more of a signing that someone like Man United should make, because we've got Højlund at 60 million, but we need a backup. Whereas I think if you need a main striker, you probably want to look a little bit elsewhere. Now, I'm not sure if Tottenham will sign a winger, because if you sign a striker, I guess Son can go back on the wings, Werner's coming in. But you have been linked to a couple of wingers. So I'm going to quickly dive through some of the wing news and the midfield news, and then we're going to go back into ranking them. So you've got Marcus Edwards that's been linked again to Spurs, but I don't know if Spurs will move on that, but the people linking them are quite reliable. Desiree Doué, very, very good player, been linked to a couple clubs in England. There was a story about Callum Hudson-Odoi 2 weeks ago as well. Obviously had a good end to the season with Forest. Bakayoko, Neto, and Nusa have all been linked to Spurs in the past. I think Nusa was quite close in January, apparently.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, very close.
And then you've got like Nico Williams, Olise, Soule, Rafinha, Cubo, bit bigger names, a little bit more expensive. Some of them, like Olise, looks Man United or Chelsea bound, but who knows? Today I saw this story about Eze to Tottenham. I don't know what your thoughts are on sort of the Eze situation. Do you think it's something that Tottenham are going to do? Do you think there's a possibility of it?
1,000,000%. I mean, I to get him in a Spurs shirt, I will drive to Crystal Palace and then bring him to the stadium myself. The way he plays in the number 10 role, and looking at the likes of James Maddison, didn't really have the best of season, and we've seen that now because he's not in that England squad. Eze, for me, in terms of the transfer targets we're linked to, he is at the very, very, very top. He's the number one for me. He can play out wide. He was instrumental to Crystal Palace's last season and kind of towards the back, getting that form under Glasner. The way he plays in the little quick 1-2s, his G&A is very good as well, homegrown. So I don't think that the only downside to it is apparently we've only got 100 to 120 million to spend, which means half of that would be going on Eze. But I'd be happy with that because I think we could see 8 to 10 departures this summer for Spurs. Like we're talking a massive. It's not even a rebuild because for it to be a rebuild, you have to have won something. Like Man United are actually in a legitimate rebuild, whereas we are kind of like just moving the squad away.
Clear out. Yeah, I've seen that actually. And I've seen there's like 12 players that could be moved on. I agree. I think Eze could be a good signing, and we'll go over to ranking him. Him and Gallagher seem to be the most linked to midfield, but I saw a report about Joe Bellingham the other day. Atalanta's Ederson has been linked to Tottenham a little bit, and I know that Patrici's apparently a big fan of him. Gibbs White, Anana have been linked, and then Archie Gray, Weaver, Huleman, and other players that have been linked, but it's a bit less reliable. If you were to predict what midfielders Spurs are bringing, or midfielders if you think they're bringing more than one, who do you think's most likely?
I think Conor Gallagher's nailed on to join either Spurs or Villa. I think he's the way he plays, and I'm a big believer of reliability at the time can be the best ability. He's in the number 8 role. Like he gets a lot of stick, and some of it is justified, but in terms of the way we play, we need a workhorse. We've got too many similar profiles in Bissouma, Sarr, Højbjerg, Bentancur. They're all a little bit too similar. Gallagher's the one who's got the energy, and I think if we bring him in the 8 role and Eze in the 10, I think that'd be brilliant. I don't think Joe Bellingham at this moment, it's a huge step up to go from battling for a Champions League position to Sunderland. I know Jude Bellingham had that similar step up, but Jude Bellingham in the Championship, his numbers were a hell of a lot better than Job. That's not saying Job will succeed. Other players will be linked to. I know you just brought Marcus Edwards on the screen. Apparently, he's available for like £8 million. And I think Tottenham have got a 35% cut off of whatever the fee is because we sold him to Lisbon. So you can talk about we get him for like £5 million. Even at that price, I still don't want him. I don't think he's that great. His highest amount of goals I think he's got in one season in Liga NOS is like 6. So we've already signed Timo Werner for another year out wide. I mean, where does Marcus Edwards play? We've got we've got too many players that can play different positions. We don't have any out and out wingers. Like, for instance, like if you look at the way Rashford plays, yes, he can play up front, but for me, he's best when he's out wide. Kulusevski's got question marks above him. Brennan Johnson's got question marks above him in terms of what are their best positions. Because one week they're having a great game in the 8 role, the following week they're stinking it up out wide. Then they're playing good out wide, and they go back to the 8 role and they're not so good. So, yeah, in terms of the two positions players on that list, Eze and Gallagher for me are I could pretty much bank on we'll be getting Gallagher, but I don't know about Eze yet.
Yeah. I was going to say Gallagher's looking most likely. It's just that Chelsea want 50 million, and I think you can get a better deal with like Chelsea's need to sell and all of that as well. Now, I want to dive into Marcus Edwards because I agree with everything you said on the guy. Like, personally, I would put him in that could do better /Y category. Like, what were you thinking of putting him in?
Yeah, I'd put him in Y personally. I think the only reason we are being linked is because it's at a cut price and the fact that he's a homegrown player. But in terms of the wide players you've got, I mean, I think most of them are probably better than him.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's probably the weaker player you're linked to. It's just very much like, oh, it could be another name for depth. But if you've got Werner in it, it's like, well, if you're going to bring in a winger now, you want, as you said, like a goal scorer. Now, one guy that I think if he could stay fit and he was available for the right price would be perfect for Ange. But there's a lot of questions around price and fitness, and that is Pedro Neto. Where would you rank him?
Yeah, I mean, his injuries and price tag's a little bit of a put off, but in terms of the player, I would put him in that top signing category because I think he got 10 assists in the Premier League last year.
Yeah.
His numbers are very, very good. He can hug that touchline. I think he'd come in and start well above Brennan Johnson on that right-hand side. And if he did get injured, at least you've got Johnson as cover and maybe Timo if he wants to go out on the right-hand side or Kulu. So at least if he got injured, the depth is there. But I think he's a top player. Like you said, that price tag is a little bit. I mean, if they're looking at 60, 70 million, then it's not going to happen with Levy. But I think he's a top player.
Yeah, no, I really like Pedro Neto. He's definitely suits Ange. Now, a player that's a little bit less well known, but he's been linked to United, and I'm a big fan of him. He's only 18. Is Desiree Doué. I don't know how much you know about him, but if you do, like, where would you place him yourself?
I'll be honest, I don't know much about Desiree Doué, but if you're being linked to him, I'm assuming he's a right winger or is he a left winger?
He's a left winger, but he's very can play in the middle, can play out wide. He's probably a winger, but he's got that sort of Neymar, can play left, right, central.
Well, I mean, his price tag, I imagine at that age, is probably going to be relatively high. I'd probably, because I don't know, I'm not going to say I know the way he plays. I'd probably put him in decent for a right feet. I mean, if you're obviously naturally want to upgrade your wingers, so I can't imagine him being a bad player.
Yeah, I put him in top signing for you if he's available for that sort of £30 million mark that he's being quoted at, because I think he's got like a bit like Bergvall. He's got a very, very high ceiling.
Yeah,
personally myself, but I also think because Spurs maybe want someone a little bit more experienced on the wing, I can understand it also going in decent for right fee. Like, I think Neto would probably be better. I'll put him in top signing just because I really rate this guy here as well. Nico Williams, I mean, for me, you know, other than his wages, he's the full package, left or right wing.
Yeah, I mean, the wages are ridiculous. I mean, we've been linked with this guy for, I think, maybe 3 transfer windows now. I'd put him in the top signing category, but like you just said, the only caveat is he'd come in and be, I think there's a clause in Son's contract where if someone is paid, comes in on a bigger contract, the club naturally have to match Son's salary to that player. It was the same with Harry Kane. So not only would we be giving Son an extra like 40, 50 grand a week, you'd probably be paying him. He's not going to want to take a pay cut, Williams, is he? Let's be honest.
No.
So,
yeah,
it's a top signing for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's one of those where, like, if he was taking a pay cut, he'd be perfect Spurs because he can play on both wings. He's direct, he's fast, but it's just the wages is a little bit of a joke. What about Soule? He's obviously apparently going to be available for around 25 million because Juventus are willing to sell him, despite him having an absolutely unbelievable season, just turned 21 years of age. I don't know what your thoughts are on him or how much you've watched him, but where would you put him?
Yeah, for that fee, looking at the way he's performed this season, I'd put him in top signing. There's another player as well at Stuttgart as well. I think it's Chris Furyk. He's another one who's had a very, very good season, but for some reason got such a low fee. Yeah, for the way he's played at Juve and considering we've only got limited transfer budget, yeah, I'd put him up there.
Yeah, I agree. What about Callum Hudson-Odoi?
Interesting one, because I looked at our left back situation, and Ryan Sessegnon and Reguilon are both going to be going, which means we've only got Destiny Udogie, and they're not really left backs in our system. They're kind of like attacking midfielders. If he come in as a left back / attacking midfielder role, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But 35 million pound price tag they want, yeah, for me, for that price tag, I'd probably put him in could do better.
Yeah, I agree. I think if he reaches his potential and stays fit, there's definitely a top player in there, but there's also sort of those question marks around. Now, one guy that was linked to Spurs, but not so much, he's been linked more to Liverpool, is Bakayoko.
Top signing for me. Like, I think whoever he joins, he's going to be absolutely ridiculous. You know, PSV this year blitzed the Eredivisie. I think they won the league in something like March. They were that far ahead, and he was one of their better players. And he's just a natural winger who takes on his fullback 9 out of 10 times. So yeah, I would bring him in. But you know, if the price tag's right, I've seen various reports saying 40 million euros, and other people saying 70 million euros. So the price tag's a little bit steep, but I'd pay it.
Yeah, I mean, 40 million euros is a deal. And I think in the Premier League, to have wingers that actually want to take on their man and make things happen and like drive the ball forward is something you want, especially under Ange. Now, one player you almost signed, a very, very young player, is Nusa.
Yeah, I think the reason we didn't was because he fouled a medical due to back problems. I think Brentford had a medical on the table for him. I'd put him in decent for the right fee. His numbers aren't bad, and I read a Norwegian basically scouting report about him that he loves to take the fullback on. Like you just said, in terms of the Premier League, there aren't too many. They kind of get down to the byline and pass it back to the fullback or pass it to the midfielder. But if he's available for 20 million euros, I'd snap him up, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the guy that could be your first signing, Conor Gallagher.
Yeah, decent for the right fee. I don't know. In terms of the system, I'd put him in the top signing category because we are crying out for a number 8. But the 50 million pound price tag for me, I mean, apparently they've got to sell him before June the 30th to do with they've got to essentially match the books and sell players. I think he could be a top player for us.
Yeah, it's one of those where, like, if you get him for the right price, then like go for it. But if Chelsea are gonna like mug you off a little bit, they need to sell. You can definitely get the price tag down. And I guess he's got homegrown leadership qualities as well. I do think you definitely need someone that can maybe play as a 6 as well. And you've got to be a little bit careful about how you spread money across the midfield. But one guy that can play as a 6, and I've not watched loads of him, but I watched elements of the Europa League where he played. And the last 4 or 5 times I've watched him, he's looked so good. Like, he's looked really good. And I might have to do more research on this Ederson.
Yeah, I'd put him in the top signing category. When we were linked with him back in January, it might have even been summer. A lot of people were like, oh, it's a typical Levy signing. It's because at the time he was available for about 18 million pounds, which would have been like 23 million euros. We were linked with him out and out number 6. A lot of people turned their nose up. Throughout his Europa League campaign, similar to Lookman, he's got better and better and better. And he can just play that anchor role where, because our fullbacks are so advanced, he just gives that centre backs just a little bit extra security. I think he's going to be a top player. But, once again, they're looking for probably 50, 60 million plus. They're now in the Champions League. If we're going to go and we're going to have to offer him a massive contract to get him out of that. So, yeah, I think he's a top signing, though.
Yeah, definitely. He's really grown on me as a player. It's looking a little bit less realistic, but he's definitely a top signing. One player that I think, like, sometimes I watch him, I think, wow, like, he's brilliant. And other times I watch him and he's not the best, but I'm not sure if he's an Everton player. So it's always kind of hard to judge him in Everton's system, but that is Amadou Onana.
Yeah, I agree. He kind of plays Brexit football, doesn't he, Sean Dyche, where it's like everyone behind the ball, set pieces. I'd put him in decent for the right fee. I do think I think he's a good player. He's been linked to the likes of Arsenal a number of times. I think he's more of an 8 though than a 6. Like I think when he's best when he's driving at players. But if it's the fee's right, yeah, definitely decent for the right fee.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's more of a dual kind of pivot player, whereas Ange sort of likes 1-6, sort of more 2-8s. And talking of someone that was brilliant for England the other night, it's going to the Euros, Eze.
Yeah, if there's something above must sign, he'd be in that. I think he's going to be our best signing we've made since probably Rafael van der Vaart. I said this about James Maddison, but he is the real deal. Like in terms of that number 10 role, obviously it's a shame that we've got Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden there for England, because otherwise I'd put him right in there. I think he's top class. And in terms of him himself, when we play Crystal Palace at home, we gave him and his family a box. He's under the same agency as a player as a lot of our players. So I think it just makes sense. Let's just bring him in and try and actually win something for the first time in my life.
Yeah, he's an absolute ball, and I'm so glad Southgate took him to the Euros. I mean, Maddison was upset to be dropped, but I think Eze has been in better form lately.
Yeah, I think it's justified. Like, Maddison hasn't been at the level.
Yeah. One player that wasn't picked at all and apparently had a bit of a tantrum on social media was Morgan Gibbs-White.
I mean, if he's had a tantrum, I mean, what does he expect when you've got the likes of Cole Palmer, Eze, Bellingham, Foden? You know, you've got players that can play that role that are better than him. In terms of Spurs, he'd be my second choice if we could get Eze, but Nottingham Forest are a good club when it comes to selling players. So I'd put him in a decent for the right fee. I think if you're looking at 60, 70 million, which they want, then you've got no chance. But if it's 35, 40 million, I'd pay that for Gibbs-White.
Yeah. Another one that's more recent is Jobe Bellingham.
Yeah, I mean, he had a relatively good season for Sunderland. I think he played something like 45 games or 46 games in all comps. You know, I'd be happy if we signed him, if we loaned him out to a lower-end Premier League club, because obviously his potential, I think, is very high. So I'd put him in decent for the right fee.
Yeah, fair enough. I think with Bergvall coming in, you don't really need another young, sort of more 8/10 minded kind of player in the field. It's just like, well, he's got potential, but you've got so many more advanced players. And if you sign like an Eze, there's no point for a Jobe if you've already got Bergvall, Maddison. So I agree with you there, maybe for the right fee. Another one is Hjulman of Sporting.
See, I'm very divided on this one because I've watched a few clips and he does look a good player, but Sporting apparently wants 60 million euros, which is just. I mean, do I put him in decent for the right fee again? Probably. I mean, he's a top player. Sporting have got this knack of just getting talent that's unbelievable, but when it comes to selling them, they are the kings.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you on that. He's been linked to Manchester United. He's been one of the four midfielders we're linked to, and I say, look, I think this guy could be a really good signing, but he's at Sporting Lisbon. It has to be for the right fee because there's a couple other deals out there. And one player that could be available for 35 to 40 million, been linked to Barcelona a lot more than Premier League teams, is Mats Wiefer of Feyenoord.
Yeah, he's been linked to the likes of Barcelona. I think Bayern Munich as well have been interested in him. I put him in for the fee. If the fee's right, I'd put him in top signing. I think in terms of the way we play, I think he could be absolutely brilliant. But Feyenoord apparently have come out, their CEO, and said they want to be similar to Ajax in terms of selling players because PSV and Feyenoord don't get too much for their players. But yeah, I think he could be, the way we play, a top player.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Ajax got 85 million for Anthony, so if they want to copy Ajax, they could be doing well. Now, going into defensive targets, and there hasn't been as many names sort of defensively, but Murillo's the only one I really can remember you being sort of strongly linked to. Other players have been Gertruda, who's also been linked to Liverpool. I saw a couple rumours about Kyle Walker-Peters. I'm not sure if there's that much in that. Just a couple rumours. And then Simakan, Calafiori and Doughty are also named linked. Like, out of all those players, is there anyone that you think could happen, has a real possibility?
I think Murillo, in terms of the way we play, I mean, I think he's only 21, 22. I think he could be a good signing for the right fee. I'd put him in that category. I think in terms of his playing out from the back, his ball playing ability, I think he was Forest, probably one of their top players last year. If it's 20, 30 million pounds, I'd be happy with that. But at the same time, we brought in Radu Dragusin in January, and he hasn't played too much football yet. But we're also in 4 comps next season, so squad rotation is going to be key. So, yeah, I'd be decent for the right fee.
It's definitely a decent signing. I always saw with Spurs, like, you've got sort of your 3 main centre-backs now, and Dragusin that's not played a lot. I always feel like maybe if you go for a left centre-back, you can also be able to play left-back, one of those sort of more hybrid kind of players that can play left, be back up to like a Doggy, but also be back up to Van der Ven at the same time, sort of cover 2 bases in one. And the next 2 players are quite versatile. You've obviously got Gertruda of Feyenoord that I believe can play left back, right back, any side of centre back.
Yeah, for me, if the fee is right, sign him, because we need depth both. Do you know what? I'd even put him in the top signing. Put him in the top, because the way he can play left back, right back, and I think he's played games at centre back as well, and I think he even played DM for like one half this season. Overall, the fact that we need depth for both fullbacks, I'd bring him in. But Feyenoord, 45, 50 million, are Tottenham going to pay that? It's a big question mark.
Yeah, I read some of it be 25 to 30 million. If he is 25 to 30 million, bosh. But if he is 40 million, it's not worth it. One player that could be available for the 25 to 30 million range, but again, not sure, is obviously Calafiori.
Yeah, he hasn't he been linked to a move to Juventus?
I believe so. I believe he'll stay in Italy, like most Italian players do.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he was with Thiago Motta, wasn't he? And obviously they've got a very good relationship. He's probably going to join Juventus. However, if it's the right fee and he's available, do you know, actually, no, I'd put him in the top signing. The way we play, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's realistic, because it's very rare that Italian players leave Italy and dominate. I mean, obviously you've got Jorginho and Zola and whatever and other players, but it's very rare.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think he'd be brilliant for you because he can play left back, left centre back. He's so young, but it's like realistically probably not going to happen. One that you have been linked to, homegrown, all of that, is Carl Walker-Peters.
Yeah, I put him in the could do better section. He had a relatively good season at Southampton, and he left Spurs, I think, in 2020. But obviously part of the same agency as most of the players. As a backup right back, because obviously Royale has been linked with Milan and Jed Spence is on the cusp of joining Genoa on a permanent. I guess as a backup, he wouldn't be like the worst player. There's lots of teams in the league that have worse backup right backs. But if he wants to start, then yeah, could do better, because he's nowhere near Porro for me.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. And then the last name is the defender Simakan.
Yeah, decent for the right field. We've been linked to him a number of times. I believe he can play right back, left back, and centre back. On the cusp of obviously being, that France international sort of stage. I think he's still at Leipzig. They're going to want relatively high fee for him. So I'm not sure. I don't know if it's realistic, but I would take him.
Yeah, I agree. I think because you don't play Dragusin loads, I wouldn't pay loads of money for a centre back. But if you can get someone that's a good sort of centre back, then definitely go for it for depth, being in 4 competitions and your injury scenarios. So we're going to end the video in a minute, guys. But what I asked Henry to do was sort of put his sort of dream sort of Spurs transfer window in. I sort of looked at it from like a Man United fan perspective, and I thought Sesko at 55 million, he may be now. Depends on the release clause, keeps changing, but it's gone up. Soule, 25 million if reported. Weaver, if reported, 35 million. Calafiori and Gertrude, if reported at those fees, is what I would do for Tottenham for the defensive depth, midfield, and that. I think Eze would also be another good option as well, but I sort of went for more of a 6. And then, as Henry mentioned earlier, just the mass amounts of sales. Like, these are the names I can think of that Spurs might be selling, but am I like missing a couple?
Skip. Bissouma, I think the only way we sell him is if the fee is like bang on what they want. Højbjerg, I think, is gone. Lo Celso, there's talk of him signing a new contract, but I do think he'll go. I think Rodon will join Leeds permanently. Royale will go Milan. Brian Hill, how this guy is still at the football club, I don't know. Sessegnon's just been released. Spence on the verge of joining Genoa. Solomon probably won't play for the football club again. Reguilon, yeah. Tanganga's joined Millwall. Ndombele is an interesting one because he's still on £200,000 a week, which is absolutely ludicrous. And Perisic has gone back to Croatia. So, yeah, you could probably add someone else in there. Maybe Richarlison, if Saudi come in and the fee's right. He's been linked to a move away. But, yeah, in terms of the outgoings, that's pretty much bang on.
That could be a lot of outgoings. And you could raise a decent amount of money. But as you said, like players like Ndombele with the wages, it could be a bit more difficult. But, like, as you said, if you have maybe 120 million net spend and you raise, I don't know, 60, 70 plus million in sales, which you could easily do, there could be like 200 million to spend. But again, it is Daniel Levy, which brings me into sort of your lineup. If you sort of want to explain it, these are sort of my estimated prices, but they might be a bit wrong.
Yeah, so obviously the defense picks itself. Doherty from Luton, I think could be a top player. The reason I've kind of pushed the fullback side because they practically are midfielders the way we play. Ederson I'd bring in as the DM role, or Zubimendi, but Zubimendi looks like he's on his way to Arsenal. If the fee's right for Ederson, I think he could be top. Davis, I should have put under Van de Ven. He can be the backup left back, or potentially Dragusin across. The right back, I didn't put anyone underneath because I don't know what is realistic for the club. In the midfield, obviously, Sarr and Benson Core, that would be providing Basuma goes. I think that they can kind of battle it out for that number 8 role if Gallagher doesn't come in. And then the number 10, Maddison, Eze, and Bergvall. I think Bergvall is going to be unbelievable, but he's going to need 2 or 3 years. Maddison and Eze battling out for the 10. On the right, Chris Furyk from Stuttgart. The links have come out today. I think he got 15 goal contributions in 32 games. Obviously instrumental for their getting back into the Champions League. Toney up front. He'd be my number 1 striker option, but that price tag, again, is a little bit scary. Obviously, Richarlison back up, and then Son and Werner. But I should have really put Johnson as well. I don't. Johnson's an interesting one because there's actually talk of him playing as a striker, which I don't really think that's his best role.
Yeah, he doesn't give off striker vibes. He gives off definitely winger. I feel like Johnson has been best almost when he's come off the bench and brought that pace and made an impact. Potentially like another winger and Johnson off the bench. I think it's maybe the depth you want.
Yeah, he's best when he's players that are, flagging, and he's got that quick burst of pace, running in behind, kind of similar to Son, but obviously Son's finishing ability is a lot better.
Yeah. Now I want to thank Henry for coming on and helping me with today's video. He's a Spurs fan, so it's really good to have his sort of impact. Henry, just let the viewers know where they can find you on all socials.
Yeah, so on all socials is practically Henry Wright TV, YouTube channel Henry Wright TV, or Henry Talks Football, which is more generic sort of transfer-based stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Henry. I'll put a link in the description, guys. But before you leave the video and check out Henry's channel, please hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Thank you for watching. Bye.